Alrighty, so we had the welcome into Bayou Bengals football talk. So we had the game last night. Florida State defeating LSU 45 to 24. And man, this was a case of just Florida State wanted this game, and they really came out in the second half. Brian Kelly talked about it. Florida State wanted to win this game, and they really just took control of this game in the second half. And Florida State, man, LSU, if there's one thing they really should be disappointed about, I know not having Mason Smith in this game hurts, but they let Florida State control the line of scrimmage 2 straight years out of. Gee, that is just such a disappointment for LSU. And the fact that LSU, I don't want to say they came out flat, but the fact that they came out in that second half not wanting another 2 quarters of a total battle, that should be a huge disappointment. And Brian Kelly, though, I give him credit, though. He holds himself responsible for what happened in that game. Coaches really need to do that. But yeah, he's got to just do a better job of preparing his team, play calling, fourth downs. Fourth down, they got to go for it they have to go for it on some of those they have to kick field goals on some of those situations. I know in that game it didn't really matter, but they're going to be in some close games. They might be in some more close games this year. You got to make better decisions on fourth down, and the Jaden Daniels, he's got to be better on that read option on plays like that on fourth down. But yeah, and then LSU, I didn't really, I guess, to be a little critical of Brian Kelly for a minute, I didn't really like in his post game press conference he talked about there was nothing they really could do with Keon Coleman. For number one, you probably don't want to send a blitz and leave him one-on-one with a safety. I know that kind of just happens when you send a blitz like that. Sometimes a safety has to play man-to-man against a receiver. But also, they could have prepared and, shadowed Zy Alexander on him the whole game. I know, with a guy like Coleman, sometimes maybe it doesn't really, to see his side of the argument. Maybe with Coleman it doesn't always matter, but it's ideal to avoid putting a safety on a wide receiver, especially a guy that's 6'4". So yeah, that was disappointing. That was a really tough to see Keon Coleman go out. And to me, I know I had some takes that were off about this game. Obviously, I thought LSU was going to win, but if there was one take that I had that was spot on in this game, it really was that I said if one of the Florida State wide receivers, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, goes off, Florida State, you might as well pencil in a W. And that's exactly what happened. Keon Coleman went off, 3 touchdowns, 132 yards receiving. Brian Thomas had a big game on the flip side for LSU. You could have made the case for the other side, but that was against some of the Florida State backups, and when the game was pretty much out of reach. So yeah, I think Keon Coleman, when he scored that second touchdown, that's when you kind of knew Florida State was kind of in the driver's seat to win this game. And then certainly, after the third touchdown, and when Jaheim Bell scored 45-17, the game was just Florida State had really blown it wide open at that point. But yeah. It was interesting with the LSU offensive line. I think they did a good job of doing some things to kind of cater to stopping Jared Verse. But it was unfortunate that Verse got matched up one-on-one with Will Campbell. And you saw Will Campbell held his own one play, but the next play, Verse got off of him. That's just kind of what happens. Even if you have a tackle as talented as Will Campbell, leaving him one-on-one against a guy with the caliber of Jared Verse, and that's what can happen. So Jared Verse, an excellent player. And man, credit to Florida State. This is a really good Florida State team. And I know it's just week 1, but you get the feel they do have the heart of a champion, and they could do something special this year. Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, they have legitimate threats. Offensively, and an offensive line that really played well in this game. But yeah, for LSU, I think heading into the Grambling game, I think they're really just going to have to kind of go back to a little bit back to some of the basics, fundamentals. Both teams really had some drops in this game. Florida State had some drops. LSU had some drops. They're going to have to go back, clean that up. Kyron Lacey, 2 drops. Neighbors had 1 or 2. So you got to go back. I think this week you're just going to focus on if you're Lacey, if you're the LSU receivers, okay, this week in practice we're not going to drop a ball. We are not going to drop a pass. Offensive line, I'm going to really challenge you to continue to improve. I think the offensive line, I know it's one game, but I think we got the answer to the question that this offensive line is going to be good and good to very good, but to say it's going to be elite, I think after the way they played last night, I think to say this is an elite offensive line, I think is kind of a stretch. So is it a good offensive line? Is it a very good offensive line? Yes. Is it an elite level offensive line? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, but the two, what's unfortunate for LSU, and I guess that I'm going to kind of eat crow with this a little bit, 2 positions. The defensive backs and the running backs. Now, the defensive backs, it wasn't all bad. Andre Sam did make some tackles, make some plays. Chestnut did have an interception before he then was burnt by Coleman. But the defensive backs did struggle. That was a position of concern. The running backs didn't play great. You saw actually Trey Bradford was kind of the guy they started the game with, which was interesting. Kind of that was a change up from what they from what they really thought. A lot of people thought we'd see Logan Diggs. I guess that was a coach's decision not to play him, from what Brian Kelly said. But yeah, we thought we'd see Logan Diggs. We thought we'd see maybe more Josh Williams. But yeah, they chose to go with Trey Bradford primarily as a starter. Saw Noah Cain. Noah Cain did have a touchdown. But yeah, we kind of talked about that. That's what Noah Cain's game is, a goal line running back. So yeah, nice victory for Florida State, and a game for LSU that, Brian Kelly looked really disappointed after the game, and I wish that, sometimes it's kind of hard to hold back your emotions, but I really wish he didn't really show that much emotion. Or that he was that disappointed, because I don't just want, it's such a cliche to say it's one game, but to me it's the mindset is, and I think he has this mindset a little bit, but I think the mindset is, yes, you are disappointed, but I think that's a case where you just kind of want to bottle that emotion up and really just use that as fuel, use that to really try to reach a next gear of motivation. Because you got an opponent next week that you should beat. Okay, so can we use this week to just try to play as crisp a game as possible, clean up the mistakes, receivers, like I said, no drops. Can we try to get our defensive backs to improve? If we have to play younger guys like Ashton Stamps, maybe we do. But yeah, I think, what was disappointing is I was hoping they would blitz Perkins off the edge. They used him more off ball in the middle. A guy like Perkins, I guess he can line up just about anywhere, but it seemed like, I think, to me, I would have liked to see them release, blitz him off the edge some more. But, maybe they do that next game. But yeah, I mean, obviously they don't need him to be a complete game wrecker against Grambling. But, do they try, is this a week where they can try some different things to see, what they feel comfortable doing him, and what is the best way to utilize him? Sometimes it's kind of like Isaiah Simmons at Clemson and Isaiah Simmons in the NFL. If you don't remember, Simmons was a do-it-all linebacker at Clemson, drafted first round, in the NFL, just kind of had a hard time finding a position. Sometimes I worry, that's my worry with Harold Perkins, is like, this guy is, such an outstanding athlete and mover. I worry, you worry that, you almost become too concerned with trying to find a spot for this guy to play. So that can be tough. And when you're too worried about finding a spot for this guy to play, that can lead to, focus off other things. It can lead to, Perkins, thinking too much, trying to learn too many different things. So I think with Harold Perkins, I would just put him off the edge try to play him off the edge next week. Maybe they move him into that jack position. I know Gofu and Swimson had flashes last night. They played okay. I thought Mekhi Wingo, if we're talking about, some of the few bright spots for LSU last night, I thought Mekhi Wingo played a good game. I thought it was kind of the same old with Mekhi Wingo, that they just need him to play so many darn snaps because, Gilroy, Jefferson, Jefferson is okay. But Jordan Jefferson, he just kind of is who he is. He's not, I don't think he's a guy you can ask to play a bunch of snaps. And same with Gilroy. I don't think you can ask Gilroy to play a bunch of snaps. I think Gilroy's a solid player. I actually thought Savion Jones looked all right out there. They moved him kind of inside too. Jones did a pretty good job penetrating, getting some pressure. But, yeah, you knew Mekhi Wingo, this was a game where, to me, when you start out, when you start the game and the line of scrimmage is already in favor of Florida State, this is a game where it's almost like Mekhi Wingo almost like it's like a non-negotiable. Mekhi Wingo has to have like his best game, like the game of his life for LSU to stay in it, just because with Florida State controlling the line of scrimmage, Wingo has to be, he has to do more than just hold his own out there. And, Wingo played well, but, for him to have, he can't have the game of his life every game. That's why, people call it the game of their life, or, their best game of their career. You can't have your best game of your career every game. And even though Wingo had a good game, it was, they would need him to take his game to another gear for them to really have been more effective defensively. But yeah, they were clearly missing Mason Smith. I'm not going to harp on this too much, because I'm going to say this. I think Florida State still wins that game last night with Mason Smith. I think it would have just made, I think LSU just would have hung around a little bit. I don't think Florida State would have blown it open. I think it would have been a little tighter. I think it's probably would have been a 7-10, probably in the 10 to 14 point differential instead of the 40, instead of the 21 point differential. I think, yeah, it would have been probably within, 2 scores, maybe 1 scores with Mason Smith. But yeah, without Mason Smith, yeah, Florida State had a definite edge on the line of scrimmage. But yeah, Mason Smith returns next week against Grambling. I'm happy to see him on the football field. I say he returns next week. That's not set in stone. He might not, because I guess that he's still dealing with an injury. He might not have played in this game. So well, hopefully Mason Smith is out there, and they probably won't likely play him a ton of snaps. But next week, boy, I hope that LSU, I would play Jefferson, Gilroy, Lee. I don't even know if Lee got in last night, but I would play those guys more next week against Grambling, just so I could, number one, find out, can I trust Jefferson, Lee, Gilroy to play more snaps? And then number two, we need to limit Mekhi Wingo, because, Mekhi Wingo is a guy that they cannot, without Mason Smith, they really need Wingo. And, credit to Mekhi Wingo. He played a good game last night. And, yeah, Trey Bradford, even though the running game wasn't effective and, the running backs didn't play superb, credit Trey Bradford. He had a big play to start the game, and I thought he looked all right. But, I guess if we're giving some more credit I thought the LSU defense did a pretty good job with Trey Benson tackling him. Now, I thought Omar Spates played okay. I thought he looked a little bit stiff, and I thought, to me, he looked like a guy playing his first game on a new team. It looked like he was shaking off a little bit of rust. But yeah, Omar Spates, I think, that's, to me, I think you saw enough. The way the second half went, it kind of really put a huge damper on what they had done in the first half. In the first half, I thought the LSU they were tackling pretty well, being physical, They created some tackles for loss. So I think the goal next week is, can we take some of the good things we did against Grambling? Can we finish a game, play 4 quarters of football? Can we clean up the drops with the wide receivers? Jaden Daniels needs to take care of the football. He wasn't, he just had 1 turnover last night. And can we continue to emphasize cleaning up the special teams? Another muff punt last night. And I was saying to my dad, I was like, that, you get, if you're Brian Kelly and the LSU coaching staff, you get questions all season on that. It's something you emphasize, getting better on special teams. You add more starters, special teams, and you go out and you have a muff punt. So cleaning up the drops, no more muff punts, playing better at the line of scrimmage, limiting Mekhi Wingo's amount of snaps. I think these are all things that LSU needs to do next week. Obviously Brian Kelly knows a little bit better, knows a little bit more than me, so they're probably those are all things they're going to work on, but they also have their other things that they're going to work on. They're going to watch film of this game. They're going to, probably reevaluate the cornerback position. So it's interesting. They started Sage Ryan. I don't know why Ryan wasn't in as much in the second half. I don't think he was in anyways. But yeah, Chestnut, to me, I think sometimes that's the biggest mistake. Chestnut had that interception. They left him in the game. I guess maybe this doesn't sound like the smartest take, but sometimes you don't always, you want to leave a guy that makes a play in a game, but also, Sage Ryan didn't really do anything to warrant him being taken out. So that's why that's kind of a, now, would Sage Ryan would have still gotten beat by Keon Coleman? Maybe, but also, would he have created a pass breakup there? Maybe. So, to me, I don't know. To me, leaving Chestnut in the game probably was the right thing to do in that case. But also, taking Sage Ryan out of the game, maybe a little question. But yeah, you saw a little bit of Ashton Stamps out there. I was happy to see Andre Sam, Burns, Brooks, primarily a lot of the snaps. Greg Brooks played okay, but I think he's limited. His movement abilities are very, they're okay, but he's just not as great a mover as you hope. That's the problem. Sometimes that's why in college football, if you read preseason magazines and you look at returning starters, more returning starters people always think is better. But also it's kind of like it's one of those things where it's 2 ways to look at it. More returning starters, you think, oh, that's a good thing. But we were bad last year. Oh, so more returning starters, if we're the same guys that are back that are bad. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, not that Greg Brooks was bad last year, but he was not necessarily elite. So now he's back. So we know he's going to be good, okay, but not elite, okay. Well, we want to win a national championship. We want to beat teams like Florida State. We don't want to get embarrassed on national television. Okay, well, so we're going to go with Greg Brooks. He's good. Well, is he elite? No, he's not elite. So you get where I'm going with this. It's just like, the point is Greg Brooks is who he is. I'm not trying to beat up on Greg Brooks. He's done a lot of nice things at Arkansas and LSU. But there was a play he flew up. In this game, I'm watching Florida State. Florida State is making all the big plays and the tackles for loss. Now they had some drops, I get that. But Greg Brooks flew up, and he still got credit with the tackle for loss because other people came in. He was able to turn around and get the guy. But there's a play, he comes up, just can't change direction, can't make the tackle for loss. So, and that's a play you got to make. If he is who he says he is, and if he is who people think he is, he's got to make that play. And I'm not trying to get emotional about this. I just really, to me, this is the case for, maybe some of the younger guys. Maybe Ashton Stamps will get more snaps against Grambling. This is a good time to try to reevaluate some of the positions you have a concern about. So maybe Ashton Stamps, maybe he gets reevaluated. I wouldn't give up on Deuce Chestnut. Deuce Chestnut's still a good player. I think he's going to have a good season. That's the thing. I just don't. back to what Brian Kelly said. I do not agree with there's nothing else we could have do with Keon Coleman. I think that's just lazy analysis. They could have tried, they could have put Ryan on him. They could have, to me, it was kind of one of those things where, in Florida State was kind of the same way. They trusted their corners man-to-man a decent amount in this game. I think it was one of those, both sides were confident that their guy could win some one-on-one matchups. And Brian Kelly, I think, even mentioned something about that. So to me, that's what it was a case of. Confidence that their guy could win more than the other guy one-on-one. So to me, I don't think, does that mean they're not going to be able to trust Chestnut, Burns, some of those guys one-on-one? Probably. But to me, I don't think you give up on them completely. So, yeah. Deuce Chestnut, a good player. Sad he had to get burnt badly by Coleman there, but he's gonna have a good season. I think he rebounds, and he still is a guy who plays hard, and a guy that I think really actually excels more so in zone coverage, where he can read the quarterback. He can kind of sit in the flat and come up and make tackles on screens or outside runs if he needs to. I think that's really what his game is. So, yeah, hopefully, LSU continues to improve, and hopefully, a lot of things. When you have a loss like that, you kind of really need to. And I don't know if Nick Saban said this, but I know some coaches have said this. When you have a loss like that, you kind of have to reevaluate all things. So, hopefully, they go back and they do a lot of reevaluating, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Have a chance to get in the win column against Grambling this upcoming Saturday. So hopefully, it's already Monday now. So yeah, it's a shorter week for LSU, but they got an opportunity to go to 1-1 after a really tough defeat against the Florida State Seminoles last night, 45-24. And that's I guess why that's tough. That game is tough last night is because it kind of is one of those that makes you feel hopeless. Hopeless a little bit. And why I say a little bit is because, last year you're thinking like, the case for LSU this year was you thought last year was a bit of a fluke. But to me, if you see something happen, it's like anything in life. If you see something happen once, you think, coincidence, fluke. But you see something happen twice and you're like, man, is this a reoccurring issue? Now is when LSU matches up with more teams like Florida State. Florida State, that's the thing, though. I guess what may be the best news overall for LSU is if Florida State maybe is that team. Like, they might be the team that is the best team in the country. So, LSU could be the better team the rest of the way. But also, if you meet them again, now in the back of your head you've lost to them 2 straight years. Now, I know each game is unique. Each game presents a new challenge. Each game is played on a different day. But when you've lost to a team twice, psychologically, that can really start to play mind games with you. You look at Michigan and Ohio State this year. Ohio State had an edge for so long against Michigan. But Michigan comes in with a mental edge because Michigan's won the last 2 years in a row. I know this year's a new year. This game will be played on a different day. This game will have new players. This game will have coaches who will be a year removed from the previous game. So, but yeah, tough loss for LSU, and hopefully things get turned around this week. Jaden Daniels, I thought Jaden Daniels played okay. It was kind of, to me. Okay, I guess I'll answer this question. Is Jaden Daniels improved? I'll say yes. I will say yes, he is improved. But to me, did he show evidence of a giant leap forward last night? No, he did not. So, to me, I think what's safe to say, now he's still, it's just one game. We don't want to, I guess I've had a couple takes where it sounds like I'm overreacting, but with Jaden Daniels, to me, it's like, what does everyone say? You take the biggest leap from week 1 to week 2. So, to me, Jaden Daniels showed last night that he's improved. I guess in week 2, can he show that he take another step of improvement? As the season goes on, can we see him? Can we see gradually that he's taking more steps of improving to becoming more like Jalen Hurts as opposed to Terrell Pryor or a lot of the quarterbacks that just kind of stayed the same or actually got worse throughout their college career. So is he moving forward to becoming more like Jalen Hurts, a guy who's not just a runner, a guy who also has become crisp as a passer, a guy that takes another step as a leader, a guy who takes another step as a competitor, a guy who continues to get stronger, do what he needs to do in the weight room. So keep an eye on Jane Daniels this week. And then I know that I've reiterated this a few times, but keep an eye on how they improve, and hopefully they clean up some things from special teams to drops week 2 against Grambling. So I got to wrap with that, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Bayou Bengals. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show.